The stellar horizon drifted through the purple-tinged gases of the Carina Nebula, its sensors probing the cosmic dust for signs of element deposits. Captain Marcus Rivera stood at the bridge's main viewport, watching tendrils of ionized gas curl around the ship's forward deflectors. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about this region of space made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Captain, we're getting some unusual readings from the quantum array," Lieutenant Jessica Carter called out from her station. Her fingers danced across the holographic display, trying to make sense of the data. The numbers, they don't add up. It's as if space itself is folding around something massive. Rivera turned from the viewport, his weathered face reflecting the soft blue glow of the bridge instruments. "Show me." The main display flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the surrounding space. At first, nothing seemed out of place among the swirling nebula gases. Then the sensors picked up something that should have been impossible, a void that seemed to swallow light itself, yet somehow remained visible to their instruments. "Get Dr. Wells up here," Rivera ordered, his voice steady despite the unease growing in his gut. "And someone wake up Dr. Crawford. I want his analysis on this." Before anyone could respond, the ship's proximity alerts screamed to life. The void they detected was moving, or rather, space was moving around it. The stellar horizon's artificial gravity flickered as reality rippled around them. Dr. Amanda Wells burst onto the bridge, her dark hair disheveled from sleep, but her eyes sharp with focus. "The quantum signatures are off the charts," she announced, pushing past two junior officers to reach the science station. "Whatever that thing is, it's existing in at least three-dimensional planes simultaneously." The void slowly took shape on their screens, a massive vessel, easily 20 times the size of the largest Earth Defense Fleet carrier. Its hull seemed to shift and change as they watched, as if refusing to settle on a single form. Ancient battle scars marked its surface, telling stories of conflicts fought across dimensions. "That's impossible," Dr. Thomas Crawford whispered as he joined them, his usual skepticism replaced by wonder. "The energy required to maintain a quantum state like that would exceed the output of a small star." The ghost ship, as the crew had already begun calling it, hung motionless in space. Its dark surface absorbed the nebula's vibrant colors, creating a ship-shaped hole in reality. Sensor data flooded the stellar horizon's computers, revealing impossible readings that threatened to overwhelm their systems. "There's something familiar about this," Dr. Wells muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. "The quantum signature. I've seen theoretical models like this before, in classified research from the First Contact War." Captain Rivera watched as his best scientists worked to understand what they were seeing. 20 years in deep space had shown him wonders and horrors beyond imagination. But this was different. This discovery felt purposeful, as if the ghost ship had been waiting for them. "Sir," Lieutenant Carter's voice cut through the tension, "I'm detecting active power signatures inside the vessel. They're weak, but they're there. And," she paused, double-checking her readings, "they're pulsing in a pattern that matches old Earth emergency protocols." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just another alien relic or cosmic anomaly. This ship, this impossible vessel that danced between dimensions, had human origins, or at least something that knew humanity well enough to call for help using their own signals. "Prep a boarding shuttle," Rivera ordered, his decision made. "Dr. Wells, you'll lead the science team. Lieutenant Carter, assemble a security detail. Whatever this thing is, wherever it came from, it's been waiting for us. It's time we found out why." As the crew rushed to comply with his orders, Rivera took one last look at the ghost ship through the viewport. In all his years exploring the depths of space, he'd learned that the universe's greatest mysteries often came with the highest prices. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to pay dearly for the answers they sought. The boarding shuttle's preparations were interrupted by a deafening alarm that sent vibrations through the stellar horizon's hull. Red warning lights bathed the launch bay in an ominous glow, as crew members rushed to their emergency stations. Multiple long-range sensors are lighting up. Lieutenant Carter's voice crackled over the ship-wide comm. "Captain Rivera, you need to see this immediately." Dr. Amanda Wells abandoned her equipment check and sprinted back to the bridge, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates. She arrived to find the command center in controlled chaos, with officers shouting readings across the room and holographic displays showing a cascade of data. It emerged from behind the Horsehead Nebula. Dr. Crawford explained, his usually composed voice trembling. He pointed to a massive object moving across the star chart. Initial mass readings suggested a rogue planet, but look at these energy signatures. Wells felt her blood run cold as she studied the readings. "That's impossible," she whispered, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew she was wrong. The pattern was unmistakable. She'd seen it before, in classified files that still gave her nightmares. "Talk to me, Doctor," Rivera demanded, his hands gripping the command rail until his knuckles turned white. During the First Contact War, 3 star systems went dark, Wells explained, her fingers dancing across the console to bring up more detailed scans. The official reports blamed it on stellar phenomena, but those of us with high enough clearance knew the truth. Something moved through those systems, something that turned planets into asteroid fields and stars into cold, dead husks. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The object on their screens was accelerating, its course becoming clearer with each passing second. "Earth," Carter said quietly. "It's heading straight for Earth." Rivera activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. Emergency protocols are now in effect. Prep for immediate quantum jump to Earth Defense Fleet Headquarters." "Wait," Wells called out, her eyes fixed on a new set of readings. The ghost ship, its power signature just spiked. "Look at these quantum fluctuations. They're perfectly inverse to the approaching object's energy pattern." Crawford leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening. "She's right. It's like they're 2 pieces of the same puzzle, but opposites, mirror images." "The ghost ship was waiting here," Wells continued, excitement mixing with fear in her voice. "It chose this location, this exact spot in space. What if it knew? What if it's been waiting for this moment?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's quantum sensors screamed with new data. The approaching object had changed course slightly, its speed increasing beyond anything their physics could explain. "New estimated time to Earth impact," Carter announced, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. 72 hours. Rivera's jaw clenched. Options. The Earth Defense Fleet's biggest guns wouldn't scratch that thing, Crawford said, running simulations through the ship's computer. "Based on what it did to those star systems, our most powerful weapons would be like throwing pebbles at a supernova." "Then we used the ghost ship," Wells said firmly, bringing up the quantum scanning data they'd collected. "This isn't a coincidence. That ship is here for a reason, and I'm betting it's the only thing in the universe capable of stopping what's coming." Rivera studied the data for a long moment, weighing humanity's survival against the unknown risks of meddling with technology that defied physics itself. Finally, he straightened his uniform and made the call that would either save their species or doom them all. "Dr. Wells, you have 12 hours to figure out how to wake that ship up. Lieutenant Carter, get your best security team ready for boarding. Dr. Crawford, coordinate with Earth Defense Fleet. They need to know what's coming." As the crew rushed to their tasks, Wells took one last look at the approaching object on the main screen. The planet killer, as she'd begun thinking of it, pulsed with enough power to destroy worlds. Yet somehow, deep in her gut, she knew the real threat wasn't what it could do to planets. It was what it would do to the very fabric of space-time itself. Dr. Amanda Wells stood in the quantum lab aboard the Stellar Horizon, surrounded by holographic displays showing comparative analyses between the ghost ship and Project Prometheus data. Her eyes burned from hours of staring at the screens, but she couldn't stop, not when every second brought the planet killer closer to Earth. "There's something we're missing," she muttered, manipulating a three-dimensional model of the ghost ship's quantum signature. "The similarities to our early research are too precise to be coincidence." Lieutenant Carter entered the lab, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "You've been at this for 10 hours straight," she said, placing 1 cup near Wells. "The captain's worried you'll burn out before we even board that thing." "Look at this," Wells said, ignoring the coffee. She pulled up classified files from Project Prometheus, her security clearance giving her access to humanity's most closely guarded technological secrets. "During the First Contact War, we experimented with quantum folding technology. The theory was that we could create weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to defend against." "I remember the rumors," Carter replied, studying the displays. "The project was shut down after the test site vanished, taking 3 senior scientists with it." Wells nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "That's the official story. But what if we succeeded? What if in some other timeline, we not only perfected the technology but built something massive enough to swallow worlds?" The lab's main display suddenly flickered, showing a perfect overlay between Project Prometheus's theoretical models and the ghost ship's quantum signature. The match was exact, down to the smallest fluctuation. "That's impossible," Carter whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. "The ghost ship isn't alien technology," Wells said, her voice filled with wonder and horror. "It's ours. Or rather, it's what we built in a timeline where we had no choice but to push the boundaries of physics beyond breaking point." The lab door hissed open as Captain Rivera and Dr. Crawford entered, their faces grim. "Earth Defense Fleet just confirmed our readings," Crawford announced. "The planet killer's energy signature matches exactly with what destroyed those star systems during the war." "Show them," Wells commanded, and the holographic displays shifted to reveal her discovery. The quantum patterns danced in perfect synchronization, telling a story of desperate choices and impossible science. "So we built this," Rivera said slowly, gesturing at the ghost ship's schematics. "Or some version of us did. But why send it back? Why here? Why now?" "Because we failed," Wells realized, the pieces finally clicking into place. "In that other timeline, we couldn't stop the planet killer. So we did the only thing we could. We built a trap and sent it back through time, knowing the planet killer would eventually return." Crawford shook his head, running calculations through his neural implant. "The power required to maintain temporal stability across multiple dimensions, it's beyond anything we've ever achieved. The energy cost alone would be astronomical. Unless," Wells said, pulling up new data from the ghost ship's core, "you use the planet killer's own energy signature against it. Look at these resonance patterns. The ship isn't just designed to fight the planet killer. It's specifically tuned to its quantum frequency. It's like a massive tuning fork, designed to catch and contain something that operates on the same wavelength." A sudden tremor ran through the stellar horizon, causing the holographic displays to flicker. The ship's AI announced in its calm voice, "Warning. Quantum disturbance detected. The unidentified vessel is powering up its core systems." They all rushed to the viewport, watching as pulses of energy began rippling across the ghost ship's dark surface. It all shifted between dimensions, each fluctuation revealing glimpses of other timelines, other possibilities. "It's waking up," Wells breathed, her heart pounding. "It knows the planet killer is coming. It's preparing for what it was built to do." Rivera straightened his uniform, making the decision that would change everything. "Then we better make sure we're ready to help it. Dr. Wells, prepare your boarding team. We've got a date with destiny, and we're running out of time." The Earth Defense Fleet's most powerful warship, the EDF Hyperion, fired its main quantum cannon at the approaching planet killer. The beam of concentrated energy, capable of splitting a moon in half, struck the massive object's shields and dissipated like morning mist. "No effect," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with fear. The entity's shields didn't even flicker. Admiral Chen's hologram flickered in the Stellar Horizons command center as she delivered the news. We've exhausted every weapon in our arsenal. Nothing's working. Dr. Wells, please tell me you have something. Wells stood before the assembled holograms of Earth's military leadership, her hand steady as she manipulated the quantum display. The ghost ship's power core is unlike anything we've seen, but it's based on human technology, specifically an advanced version of Project Prometheus. We shut that project down for a reason. General Roberts interrupted, his holographic face stern. The risks of dimensional collapse. With all due respect, General, Wells cut in. We're beyond playing it safe. The planet killer will reach Earth in less than 48 hours. When it does, it won't just destroy our planet. It'll tear apart the very fabric of space-time around our solar system. Captain Rivera stepped forward, supporting his science officer. Dr. Wells has a plan to reactivate the ghost ship using our modern quantum technology. We can't match its power output, but we can jump-start its systems. The assembled military leaders exchanged worried glances. Admiral Chen spoke first. What's the catch, Doctor? Wells took a deep breath. The ghost ship exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Interfacing with its systems could have unpredictable effects on our reality. But right now, it's our only option. The conference room erupted in debate, but a new alert cut through the chaos. Lieutenant Carter's voice came over the comm. Captain, the planet killer just accelerated. New arrival time, 36 hours. Silence fell across both ships as the implications sank in. They'd just lost 12 precious hours. Do it, Admiral Chen ordered, her hologram straightening. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. Just stop that thing. The holograms winked out, leaving the Stellar Horizons crew alone with their impossible task. Rivera turned to his team. Dr. Wells, how fast can you get that interface ready? 3 hours to modify our quantum core, she replied, already moving toward the door. Another 2 to establish a stable connection. But Captain, she paused, whoever interfaces with that ship's systems will be exposing themselves to multiple realities simultaneously. The human mind isn't designed to process that kind of input. Crawford spoke up from his station. The quantum shielding in our environmental suits should provide some protection, but it's theoretical at best. We've never tested them against this kind of dimensional bleed. We don't have a choice, Rivera said firmly. Prep the boarding team. Standard insertion protocol with quantum-enhanced shields. Dr. Wells, you'll lead the science team. Lieutenant Carter, your security detail will cover them. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Wells caught Carter's eye. The ghost ship's been waiting for this moment across multiple timelines, she said quietly. Whatever we find over there, it's going to change everything we think we know about reality. Carter checked her quantum rifle's charge. Just make sure those changes don't include us getting scattered across different dimensions. I'd like to stay in this reality, if possible. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of activity. Wells and her team worked frantically to modify the Stellar Horizons quantum core, pushing the technology far beyond its designed limits. Warning alerts flashed constantly, ignored in the desperate race against time. As the boarding shuttle prepared for launch, Rivera watched the ghost ship through the main viewport. Its surface rippled with increasing frequency, reality bending around it like light through a prism. The planet killer's approach had awakened something in the ancient vessel, and they were about to find out exactly what that meant. Boarding team, final checks, he ordered over the comm. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every version of Earth across every timeline. Failure is not an option. The boarding shuttle crossed the dimensional boundary surrounding the ghost ship, and reality flickered. Dr. Amanda Wells felt her stomach lurch as multiple versions of the shuttle seemed to exist simultaneously, each one slightly out of phase with the others. Quantum shields holding at 60%. Lieutenant Carter reported from the pilot's seat, her knuckles white on the controls. But these readings, it's like we're flying through a dozen different spaces at once. Through the shuttle's viewport, The ghost ship's hull rippled like dark water. What had appeared solid from a distance now revealed itself as a constantly shifting maze of surfaces, each one existing in a slightly different dimension. There, Wells pointed to a section of the hull where the dimensional fluctuations formed a stable pattern. That's our entry point. The ship is guiding us in. The boarding team consisted of 6 people, Wells and 2 quantum engineers, Carter, and 2 security specialists. All wore the latest quantum-shielded environmental suits, though Wells wondered if any protection would be enough against what they were about to encounter. The shuttle's docking clamps engaged with a shudder that seemed to echo across multiple realities. Warning lights flashed as the ship's atmosphere intermixed with their own, creating patches of space where multiple versions of the same air molecules existed simultaneously. "Quantum stabilizers online," Wells announced, checking the readings on her suit's displays. "Remember, we're not just moving through space, we're moving through possibilities. Stay close, and don't touch anything without scanning it first." The airlock cycled, and they stepped into a corridor that defied physics. The walls stretched into infinity in some places, while in others they curved in impossible angles. Light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. "My God," one of the engineers whispered, his sensor pack whirring frantically. "The ship isn't just dimension hopping. It's creating stable intersections between realities." Wells led them deeper into the vessel, following the steadily strengthening quantum signatures. Every few steps, they passed through areas where reality thin enough to see other versions of themselves walking the same path, some just minutes apart, others seemingly from vastly different timelines. "The ship's AI core should be ahead," Wells said, consulting her quantum scanner. "These energy readings suggest it's still active, but trapped in some kind of temporal loop." They entered a vast chamber that seemed to contain multiple versions of itself, all overlapping like pages in a book. In the center, suspended in a web of energy that pulsed with quantum fire, hung a crystalline structure that could only be the ship's brain. "Look at the pattern fluctuations," Carter said, pointing to where the energy strands wove together. "It's not random. The AI is trying to communicate." Wells approached the crystal core, her suit's sensors struggling to process the multiple layers of reality surrounding it. As she got closer, images began forming in the quantum fire, scenes from other timelines, other versions of humanity's fight against the planet killer. "It's showing us what happened," she breathed, watching as world after world fell to the approaching monster. "In every timeline where we fought conventionally, we lost. That's why this ship exists. It's not just a weapon, it's a message from ourselves." The crystal core pulsed brighter, and suddenly Wells understood. The quantum equations she'd spent her career studying weren't just theoretical mathematics. They were instructions, planted across multiple timelines, preparing humanity for this moment. "The ship wasn't abandoned," she announced, her voice filled with awe. "It's been waiting, growing, learning from every timeline where we failed. But it needs more than just power to work." She turned to face her team, knowing what she had to do. It needs a human consciousness to guide it, one that understands both the quantum mechanics and the price of failure. The crystal core flared again, and in its light, Wells saw reflections of herself from countless other timelines, each one reaching the same conclusion, making the same choice. The ghost ship had chosen her, across all possible realities, to be its final key. Lieutenant Carter watched in horror as Dr. Wells began removing her quantum-shielded helmet. "What are you doing?" "The dimensional interference will kill me?" Wells smiled sadly. "No, it'll transform me. The ship doesn't just need a pilot. It needs someone who can exist across all the timelines it inhabits, someone who can process multiple realities simultaneously." The crystal core pulsed in rhythm, with Wells' heartbeat now, its quantum fire casting fractured shadows across the chamber. Each shadow seemed to tell a different story, versions of humanity's last stand against the planet killer, playing out across infinite dimensions. "There has to be another way," Carter insisted, stepping forward. The security team raised their quantum rifles, unsure whether to protect Wells from the ship or from herself. In every timeline where we tried to find another way, we failed. Wells gestured to the scenes playing out in the quantum fire. Look, there's the timeline where we tried to evacuate Earth. The planet killer followed us to every colony. And there, we attempted to reason with it, to understand it. It consumed the negotiators' minds and used their knowledge to hunt us more efficiently. The ship's internal systems hummed louder, responding to Wells' proximity to the core. Streams of data flowed through the crystalline structure, each one carrying fragments of humanity's countless attempts to survive. "Doctor," one of the engineers called out, checking his instruments. "The planet killer just entered the outer solar system. 28 minutes until it reaches Earth's orbit." Wells turned to Carter, her eyes filled with determination. "My entire career led to this moment. Every quantum equation I solved, every theoretical model I developed, they were breadcrumbs left by other versions of myself, preparing me for what I have to do." The crystal core's light intensified, and reality began to splinter around them. Through the fractures, they could see other versions of the same scene playing out. Different teams, different times, but always with Dr. Amanda Wells at the center. "The ship's previous crew," she continued, approaching the core, "they're not dead. They're scattered across dimensions, their consciousness fragmented across infinite possibilities. But they lacked the theoretical framework to maintain cohesion. I have what they didn't, the complete quantum mathematics to hold myself together." Captain Rivera's voice crackled over their comms, distorted by the dimensional interference. "Planet killer's changing course. It's detected the ghost ship's power signature. Wells, whatever you're going to do." "I know, Captain," she replied, reaching for the crystal core. "Lieutenant Carter, get your team back to the shuttle. What's about to happen? You don't want to be here for it." Carter hesitated, torn between duty and friendship. "Amanda. Jessica." Wells turned to her friend one last time. "I need you to tell Earth's scientists everything you've seen here. The quantum equations, the dimensional mechanics. Humanity needs to understand them. Because somewhere, someone, another Earth might need to build this ship again." The security team began retreating, but Carter remained. "I won't let you do this alone." Wells smiled, touching the crystal core with her bare hand. Quantum energy surged through her body, and she felt her consciousness begin to expand. "I'm not alone," she gasped as reality fractured around her. "I'm with every version of myself who made this choice, across every timeline where humanity needed saving." The chamber filled with blinding light as Wells' consciousness merged with the ship's systems. Carter watched, shielding her eyes, as her friend's form became translucent, existing in multiple states simultaneously. "Go." Wells' voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "The planet killer is coming, and I need to remember how to catch it. I need to remember what every other version of me learned when they tried. I need to become what I was always meant to be, humanity's last line of defense across all possible worlds." Carter finally retreated, her vision blurred with tears as she ran for the shuttle. Behind her, Dr. Amanda Wells ceased to exist as a single entity, becoming something that both was and wasn't human. A consciousness spread across dimensions, waiting to spring the trap that would save not just one Earth, but all of them. The Stellar Horizons bridge crew watched in awe as the ghost ship transformed. Its hull, once dark and shifting, now blazed with quantum energy that rippled across multiple dimensions. Where Dr. Wells' consciousness touched the ship's systems, reality itself seemed to bend and fold. "Energy readings are off the scale," Dr. Crawford reported, his sensors struggling to process the data. "The quantum signature, it's spreading across all dimensional planes simultaneously." Lieutenant Carter stood at the tactical station, her hand steady on the controls despite having watched her friend transform into something beyond human moments before. "The planet killer's changing course. It's coming straight for us." Captain Rivera gripped his command chair. "Dr. Wells, if you can still hear us." "I hear you, Captain." The voice came from everywhere at once, echoing across quantum frequencies. It still held traces of Amanda Wells, but now carried harmonics from countless other timelines. I remember now. I remember every attempt, every failure, every lesson learned across infinite dimensions. The ghost ship's form continued to change, its structure adapting to house a consciousness that existed in multiple realities. Sections of the hull phased in and out of existence, creating a complex geometric pattern that defied conventional physics. The planet killer, Wells' multidimensional voice announced, isn't just a weapon. It's a wound in reality, consuming dimensional energy to power itself. That's why conventional weapons can't harm it. They only exist in one reality at a time. Through the viewport, they watched the planet killer approach. Its massive form distorted space around it, leaving trails of broken reality in its wake. Stars dimmed as it passed, their light caught in its dimensional wake. 15 minutes to intercept, Carter reported, watching the distance close between the two impossible vessels. The ghost ship's quantum core pulsed with increasing power. Wells' consciousness spread through its systems, making adjustments based on memories of countless failed attempts in other timelines. In every reality where we tried to destroy it, we failed, Wells explained, her voice resonating through the quantum frequencies. But we never tried to trap it, to use its own dimensional distortions against it. The planet killer accelerated, perhaps sensing the threat. Its surface rippled with dark energy, preparing weapons that could shatter worlds. Energy spike, Crawford shouted. It's charging its main weapon array. All vessels, clear the area, Rivera ordered, broadcasting to the gathered Earth Defense Fleet ships. Fall back to minimum safe distance. The ghost ship's response was immediate and devastating. Reality curved around it as Wells activated systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The space between the two vessels became a twisted maze of quantum possibilities. The trap is ready, Wells announced, her voice now carrying the weight of infinite experiences, but containing something this powerful. The cost will be permanent. This ship and everything inside it will have to exist outside normal spacetime forever. Carter stepped forward, her voice tight with emotion. Amanda, you don't have to. I already have, Jessica. Across countless timelines, this was always the choice. The only variable was whether we'd understand enough about quantum mechanics to make it work. That's why we sent the knowledge back, spread across so many realities that some version of me would eventually put it all together. The planet killer fired its primary weapon, a beam of pure dimensional energy that could unravel the fabric of spacetime. But instead of striking the ghost ship, the beam curved, caught in the quantum maze Wells had created. Now, Wells commanded, her consciousness spread across every system, every reality where the ghost ship existed. The trap began to close, drawing the planet killer into a space between dimensions where its power would fuel its own prison. The universe seemed to hold its breath as two impossible objects, both created by desperate acts across multiple timelines, prepared for their final confrontation. And at the heart of the ghost ship, Dr. Amanda Wells existed everywhere and in nowhere, ready to sacrifice everything. She was to save not just one Earth, but all of them. The quantum maze surrounding the ghost ship collapsed inward, drawing the planet killer into its intricate web of dimensional folds. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as Dr. Wells executed the trap that countless versions of herself had died perfecting across infinite timelines. Hull integrity at critical levels. Crawford's voice shook as he read the sensor data. The dimensional stress is tearing both ships apart. Through the Stellar Horizons viewport, the crew watched as the ghost ship's structure began to fold around the planet killer like a geometric origami of light and shadow. Each fold represented a different layer of reality, each twist another dimension being used to contain the threat. The mathematics are perfect. Wells' voice resonated across quantum frequencies, simultaneously coming from everywhere and nowhere. Every failure taught us something. Every defeat showed us another piece of the solution. We just needed enough time to put it all together. The planet killer fought back with devastating force. Beams of pure dimensional energy lashed out, trying to break free of the trap. But Wells had anticipated every move, using the knowledge gained from countless other timelines to counter each attack. Lieutenant Carter gripped her console as reality shuddered around them. Amanda, the power readings. Nothing can contain that much energy. Not in one dimension. Wells agreed. Her consciousness spread across the ghost ship's systems. But spread across infinite dimensions, the load becomes manageable. The planet killer's own power will become its prison walls. The space around both vessels began to crystallize, forming structures that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The planet killer's attempts to escape only strengthened the quantum bonds holding it in place. "Look," Crawford whispered in awe, pointing to his readings. "The dimensional folds, they're creating a closed loop, a perfect prison outside of normal spacetime." Captain Rivera leaned forward in his chair. "Dr. Wells, what happens now?" Now, Wells' voice carried both triumph and sadness. "We complete the circle. In every timeline where we succeeded, this moment becomes a fixed point, a quantum constant that echoes across all realities." The ghost ship's form began to blur, its edges becoming indistinct as it pulled the planet killer into the space between dimensions. Light bent impossibly around both vessels as they began to phase out of normal spacetime. "The quantum singularity is stable," Crawford reported, his voice filled with wonder. "She's actually done it. She's created a self-sustaining prison outside of regular spacetime." Lieutenant Carter stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Amanda, is there any way to bring you back?" The quantum frequencies resonated with what might have been laughter. "I'm not gone, Jessica. I'm everywhere. Every dimension where humanity faced this threat. Every timeline where we found a solution. I exist in all of them now. And I'll keep existing, watching over the quantum prison, ensuring the planet killer never threatens another Earth in any reality." The ghost ship and its captive began to fade from view, leaving behind a subtle distortion in space, a reminder that some points in reality remain constant across all possible timelines. "Remember what you saw here." Wells' voice grew fainter as the ships phase out of normal space. "Remember that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to learn from failure, to pass knowledge across time itself, to sacrifice everything to protect not just our world, but all possible worlds." The quantum distortion flickered one last time, and both ships vanished completely. In their place, a small ripple in spacetime remained, a perpetual warning that some threats require solutions beyond conventional physics. On the Stellar Horizons bridge, Captain Rivera stood at attention, saluting the empty space where his science officer had made the ultimate sacrifice. The rest of the crew followed suit, honoring the woman who had become humanity's eternal guardian across all dimensions. Lieutenant Carter wiped her eyes and turned to her console. "Sir, quantum sensors detect no trace of the planet killer. The threat, all threats like it, they're contained." "Not contained," Crawford corrected softly. "Protected against, by someone who understood that true victory sometimes requires becoming something beyond human. A quantum constant, a guardian across all possible realities." The stars seemed to shine brighter as the stellar horizon turned toward Earth, carrying the story of how humanity's understanding of quantum physics, combined with one woman's sacrifice, had saved not just their world, but all possible worlds, forever.